Okay, good day. So, welcome to our first session of the class. Now, without wasting much time, I'll be starting afresh from beginning. So, taking HTML, then we'll proceed from there to CSS. So, now the last time we talked about HTML. So, um, HTML. Now, I'm going to be making use of VS Code, and I have some extensions installed on my VS Code. So you might need to install some of them when you are working, one of which is Live Server. I don't know whether you have it, but if you don't have it, you need to install it because it's very, very useful when it comes to front end development. So now, without wasting much time, let's get into HTML and then we'll move to CSS. Now, when you want to start HTML writing, people are used to the idea of using Shift one. So we call this the Emmet. So using the Emmet shortcut. But our advice to not go with this method. So it's always best to, at least for a start, it's always best for you to understand every single tag that you are being helped to populate into your code. So now I'm going to be explaining what all these tags does. Though I've explained some of them in the past, but I'm just going to repeat everything for the sake of completion. Now, from the beginning, we have the doc type. So this tag is what helps the browser to understand the version of HTML that you are using in your code. So this syntax we have currently is the one we use for the current version of HTML, which is HTML5. So it is the shortest version. This is the shortest way of writing the doc type. Unlike in the past when it's used to be very, very long and it has to be very, very specific also. So, and you need to memorize or know the exact syntax without making any mistake, because in the past when you don't use the correct syntax, your whole code might not work. So, but because we're using HTML5 and everything has been simplified for us, so we don't need to bother ourselves about a lot of things. But it's also still essential for us to write the doc type. So this is what this part does for us. Now, the next line is the HTML tag itself. So inside of here is where you have all the tags that's going to be that's going to work for your web page you are trying to build. Now, if you look at the HTML, that's the arrangement of everything, you see that everything is being indented. What we mean by indentation is that the head, the head tag that we are seeing currently is being inside of HTML. So the arrangement of making things diagonal, like, the head tag is inside of here, and so it shows hierarchy. It's a way of showing hierarchy that, okay, the head tag is a child of HTML. We call it child. So then it means that meta tag also is the child of head tag. So now, on the internet, you might be hearing people saying element tags and thereabout. So in HTML, we have two sides of things, or let me say three sides of things: the tag itself, the content, and the closing side of it. That's the opening tag, the content, and the closing tag. So if you look at this doc type, something is kind of unique to it. Is not ending with this form of HTML here. If you look at the HTML tag here, it is having a corresponding closing tag. So it means that this part here you are seeing here, the syntax for writing any HTML tag is beginning with open bracket, that your angular brackets, people call it less than sign, so that's how you start the opening tag. Then you write the name of the tag. Let's say maybe I want to insert an image, so we use img tag, which is the image tag. If I want to, for every tag, every tag that is opened must be closed. Now, there are some exceptions, but generally, most tags has to be closed. So when you write this HTML, if the tag is the this kind of tag that needs to be closed, you must close it. It's very, very important. Now, this first part here of this, for example, this HTML here, this is the opening tag of this particular element. The combination of both the opening tag and the closing tag is what we call an element. So this is an HTML element. This is a head element. This is a meta element. But if you now look at it, you see that the meta tag does not have a corresponding closing tag. So this is the opening tag for HTML, the opening tag for head. It also have the corresponding closing tag. So, but the meta tag does not have that. So this kind of tag that doesn't have a corresponding closing tag, we call it self-closing tag. So because it doesn't need to be closed, and the reason why it doesn't need to be closed will be clear when I'm talking about attributes. Now, every HTML element has a purpose. Every HTML element have a purpose. Now, the purpose of HTML tag itself, obviously, it is to wrap all the elements in your document. So every code you are going to be writing has to be within the HTML tag. That's the HTML element. Now, directly inside of HTML tag, when a tag is inside of another tag, we call that tag a child tag. Whereas the tag which is housing another tag is called the parent. It's called the parent. So which means that this head tag here is the child of HTML tag. Meta tag is the child of head tag. That's the head element. Whereas the head element is the parent of meta tag. So this head element that we have here, currently it is having 3 children: the meta tag, second meta tag, and the title tag. All right, so we have the opening tag, the closing tag, the content. Now this head element that we have here, its own content is these children, that is houses. Whereas when you look at the title tag, its own content is this text written inside of it called documents. I'm going to be explaining what all these elements does. Now, inside of the HTML elements directly, there are 2 tags or 2 elements that needs to be inside of it. The first one is the head element, and the second one is the body element. Now, when you go to your website, for example, when you go to your web page that you built, view it on the browser, you will see that there are some certain things you'll be seeing in your code that is not visible on the browser. For example, this title document that we see now, if I should open this document in my browser currently, I should be seeing I should not be seeing anything because currently we don't have any content on this page. But let me open this tag. So I'm going to be using my live server extension that I installed earlier. So it's opening. So if you look at this page that is opened, you can't see anything. When you look at the top, at the tab side, you'll see the word document written there. Now that document word that is written there is not just coming there randomly. It's coming from somewhere. So where is it coming from? It is coming from the title element. So if I should change this from document to let's call it my first web page. So if I should go back to the browser, you will see that it has changed from document to my first web page. Okay, so that's the purpose of. Now if you look at this other tag here, or this other tab at the left side of this browser, you see that it is having its own name too. So that is how when you go to some website and you see the tabs that you open is having a particular text, so that text is coming from a place which is called the title elements. So whatever you write here is going to be displayed on that part. It's not going to show in the body of the of the web page that you are building. Okay, so what does that tell us is that every element, every content inside of head tag, they are not meant to be viewed on the browser. They are meant, so they are kind of like some information meant for the browser to do some certain things. Hence all these tags that we are seeing here, the meta tag, and you can see here we have multiple meta tags written here. Okay, so the first meta tag is having something called charset is equals to UTF-8. What does that mean? It means something. Meta, this one also have an attribute called name is equals to viewport. What does that do? It means something. I'm going to be explaining everything. But the second tag that needs to be inside of our HTML element is the body tag. Now, inside of here is where every content that you want displayed on the website has to be written. So if you want anything visible on the website, it has to be within the body tag. All right, so now let's say for example now I put a tag. This is a p tag called a paragraph tag. So if I should say if I should write something there and I say my name is Edward Ehain, right? So if I should go back to the browser now, I'm going to be seeing the text that I wrote there. So let's refresh. You can see now the text, my name is Edward Ehain, is now being displayed. Okay, so that tells us that under our HTML elements, we need two types of information. The first information are those ones that is meant for the browser. Then the other contents, which is for the body element, are those information that is meant for whoever is viewing our web page. All right, so that's not about those body tags. About the HTML tags and the direct children that it has to have. You can decide to put more elements inside of the HTML tag directly, but it is always advisable, by standard, to always put all your content within the body tag. That is the standard. All right, so now let's come back to some of the elements that we have here. Now, for me to explain what these different elements are doing, these two meta tags, what they are doing, we need to talk about something called attributes. You might be hearing attributes. What does that mean? Now, when you look at this meta tag, let's start from the doc type. You will see that after writing the name of the element, because the first word after the opening angular bracket, that is the name of the tag that you are trying to use. Okay, so in this case, the name of this tag is called doc type. Then the next one, the name of the tag is called HTML, because what? The tag is HTML tag. Then the next one is head. Now, coming back to attributes, if we see when we look at this doc type, you will see that immediately after it, there's another word written called HTML. What does that mean? It's not just a random word there, so it means something. When you come to HTML tag also, you see another word there written lang, L-A-N-G, and it is even saying is equals to en. So what does that mean? It means something. Now, when we come back to this doc type and it is written HTML, what we're actually saying is that we are writing HTML5. Now you might be wondering, okay, there's no 5 at the end of it, so how is it going to know that it is HTML5? Remember I said from the beginning that the current version of HTML we are using, and possibly the final version of HTML, is HTML5. So the browser automatically knows that when it sees this thing without specifying which version number, it automatically makes use of HTML5. So that's by default. Now, when it comes to this HTML element here, and it has lang is equals to en. This old text here is called an attribute. So it means that this HTML element, now for me to explain this, just assume that every of the elements is a person. Let's say this HTML element represents you as a person now. So, for every human being, we have different characteristics. For example, let's say this is me, for example. Now, if you want to describe me to somebody, you have to tell the person my characteristics. Okay, I'm tall, I'm dark, I'm kind of fat, my eyeball, the color of my eyeball, my color of my skin, those kind of different parameters to describe that person properly. The same thing happens with every HTML element. Remember I said every HTML element has a specific purpose. Now, in order for you to help the browser to understand what this particular element is doing, you need to describe the elements to the browser. So when the browser sees HTML elements, it knows that, okay, this person is trying to write an HTML document. Okay, so when you now tell it lang is equals to en, it knows. So this lang is kind of saying the language with which you are writing your document is English. Hence, lang. So this lang is the name of the attributes. Then this other side of it, you can see that it has two sides. The characteristic name, that's the attribute name, then the value of that attribute. So the value of the attribute. So in this case now, the name of this attribute is called lang. Now we have so many different kinds of attributes that we can make use of. Depending on the elements that you are working with, you will be coming across different kinds of attributes. But for the sake of this HTML tag that we are talking about here, one of the attributes that is useful here is called the lang attribute. Now, if we now come, now one thing you need to note here is that every attribute has two sides. Just like the way HTML element has two sides or can have two sides. The opening tag, just like we have the opening tag and the closing tag. So the same way we also have the two sides of an attribute. So the first side, which is the left hand side, is the name of the attribute. Then it is separated by the equals to sign. So it's kind of like the way you write mass and you say A is equals to so thing. So that equals to is kind of pointing to the value of that attribute. So in this case, lang is equals to en. It means that the name of the attribute called lang is having the value of en. So this en here stands for English. So if your language you are writing in is, let's say, Spanish, so it's going to be having es, es. But if it is let's say Chinese, is going to be having ch, and like that for different kinds of languages. But because we're using English in Nigeria, so it makes sense for you to make use of English. In fact, most websites in the world make use of English. Even the Chinese websites, many times they are all written in English, so it makes sense you'll be seeing more of English everywhere. Now, if you now come to this meta tag, now if you look at this meta tag here, we have two meta tags, but they are all having different kinds of attributes. Now, remember I said every element has a particular purpose. Now, this meta tag, if you look the English meaning of meta, it means something that is invisible. You get something invisible. So remember I said we have two types of information that is needed in our HTML document. The information specific to the browser and the information meant for the users. So it now makes sense for you to be that we have some meta tags here. So this meta, when the browser sees meta, it feels like, okay, there's a secret information that needs to be shared here. But how does the browser now knows that, okay, because it knows that a meta tag means a secret information. Okay, so what kind of secret information are you willing to now, do you want to pass to it? So that is where you now have different attributes that means different things. So one of the attributes that we are seeing here is called char set, which is character set. What does this mean? Character set is the format with which your language is written. This is different from lang. Oh, sorry, I mistakenly removed this part here. So we have different kinds of character sets, but the standard that we're making use of currently in web development, especially in writing HTML document, is UTF-8. So you can search for the different other format that we have, but what you are most likely to be seeing everywhere on the internet is UTF-8, and that is even the reason why when you use your emmet function in VS Code, it automatically makes use of UTF-8. That is the standard, because when you're writing English, it is most likely for you to use UTF-8. Then the next plain attack that we are seeing here. So what this one is telling the browser is that this document, this index.html document that we have here, is using the format, is an English document using the format of UTF-8. That's the standardization of UTF-8. The next meta tag that we have here is called name. It's also meta tag also, but the attributes it has. Now, if you look at this one here, it is having two attributes. The first one is the name attribute. The second one is the content attribute. Now, you need to take note here that the two attributes are separated by space. It's very, very important. They are separated by space. But the attribute name and the value are separated by equals to sign. Now, it's not all HTML attributes that needs to have value. We'll get to that as time goes on. But you've already seen an example of that, which is this HTML attribute here. You can see it doesn't have equals to something. So it's just HTML. So you'll be seeing things like that as we progress. Okay. Now, this meta tag here is having two different attributes. We can add more, we can remove some. So some elements is going to be having like two or more attributes, while some might not even have any at all. If you look at the head tag currently, it doesn't have any attributes. If you look at the body tag currently, it doesn't have any attributes. The p tag doesn't have any attributes. Okay, so an element can have one or more or none attributes attached to it. So the attribute is just a way of describing what that element is doing. That is the bottom line of what an attribute is. It's a characteristic of that particular element. Okay, so now that's that about attributes in HTML. We'll be seeing more and more and more attributes as we progress. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the different HTML tags that we have. But before I proceed, I'm going to be showing you the project that we're going to be building as we progress. Now, what you are seeing here currently is a website that I just finished building for a client. So we are going to be rebuilding it together in this tutorial session. Now, we're going to be rebuilding all these sections, okay? So yeah, now the reason why I chose to use this is that it has various elements. It has various HTML tags, and when it comes to CSS aspect also, it encompasses a lot of a lot of CSS rules that we're going to be talking about, a lot of it. So we're going to be rebuilding this project together. Okay, so let's come back to VS Code. Now, the various HTML tags that we have. Remember I said the current HTML version we are using is HTML5. Okay. Now, it means we have added HTML1, HTML2, HTML3, HTML4. And for each version of HTML, it comes with an upgrade or an update to the existing tags. So all the tags that we have currently was not there. They were not there from beginning. Okay. For example, we have some new tags that are just added. One of which is header, footer, aside, and the rest like that. So you might be seeing some tags that some people call the HTML5 tags. Okay, so but all in all, they are all HTML tags. So because we're using HTML5 now, there's no really need to differentiate between them. But I'm only saying them just in case you come across them on the internet. You will be able to understand that okay, these are the recent tags that are just being added into the HTML specification. Okay, we've seen some elements already. We've seen the doc type, we've seen HTML, we've seen head, we've seen meta, we've seen title, we've seen body, and I've even used p tag. But I'm going to be going through every one of them again to explain them properly. Okay. Now, let's start with the ones I've not talked about here. The most popular, or let me say, the most commonly used HTML tag that you will see in every document, in every web page that you will see built, whether by you or by anybody in the world, is a tag called div. Okay, div. Honestly speaking, I don't think anybody knows the meaning of this div but I just used to call it division tag, you know, or dividing tag, whatever name you want to call it. I think it's an arbitrary, it's a generic name given to this particular tag because one of the things we use it for is for grouping. You might be wondering, okay, grouping what? When we come back to this document that I have here, okay, this project I want to build. If you look at it, we have different sections and we have different sides to this project. If you look at this first side here, this upper side here, you see that there's a logo and there's this menu side. Then when you scroll down, you see this big section. This big section. This section is called the hero section. Then we have this tag. We have this elements section here. This very big one, and we also have this text part here, and we have these buttons. These two buttons. If you look at everything looks organized. Everything looks grouped. That's exactly what we use the div tag for. It is mostly used for grouping. So to group different elements together. So now we have this div. I might not be using it yet, but just know that we make use of it for dividing or for grouping elements. Now the next tag I'm going to be talking about, which is very, very useful, is the p tag, which stands for paragraph tag. Now we know what paragraph means. So paragraph is paragraph. I don't need to explain that. So here is, if you go back to this project here, you will see that it's called Lorem Ipsum Dolor Sit Ahmed blah blah blah, and you know you can see inside of Lorem, inside of this p tag. So let's say I want to write Lorem 30, and then you can see now what I just type here is not magic. It's actually a function in VS Code called Lorem Ipsum generator. So it's kind of like a shortcut when we are building websites. We make use of those kinds of, this what you are seeing here is something we call filler text. Okay, lorem ipsum. So when what I just did now is generating 30 words. If you count the words here, is number than 30. So that's why I just type lorem 30, and VS Code has the program that automatically checks for that. And once it sees it, just generates 30 words for you. So if I want it to generate, let's say 100 words for me, I just lorem 100, and it does that for me automatically. So it helps us to, to fill a particular space with text, just in case, since we're just building the website. As time goes on, you are understanding everything more and more. So this is paragraph tag. Now if I should come back to the browser, I should be seeing all this text that I need to reload, and now you can see the text here. Now, if I should now come, the next element that I'm going to be introducing you to is called the heading tags. Now, the reason I want to show this one next is important. Now, I'm going to be putting this one at the top here. So we have the heading elements. Now, observe I said elements, plural. It means we have multiple of them. So starting from something we call H1. Now this is the biggest of them. We have H1 to H6. So H1 being the biggest, if I should say this is a heading, all right. So if I should come back to, now I'm going to, before I go to the browser, I'm going to be duplicating this one 3 times, I mean into 6 places rather. So let's do this 6 times. Is this 6? Yeah, this 6. So I'll just change this one to H2, 3, 4, sorry. 5 and 6. Then the same thing to the closing tag. Okay. Now, when I go to the browser, now you can see that the 6 elements that I created from H1 to H6, they all have different sizes. So this is kind of like a way of you knowing the different size of an element that you want to make use of. If you look, observe, when we use the p tag, it has a specific, or let's say its own default size. Remember, we are not using CSS yet. We are not styling anything to adjust the size to the particular font or size, the font size that we might want. But the default size for every element has its own default size or its default styling. So the default styling for H1 is to have this big size. Is the biggest of them all. So H1. Then the next one is H2, H3, H4, H5, and H6. Now you might not be wondering that, okay, how come the H6 is now even the H5 is smaller than the p tag itself? Well, that's just for aesthetics, but it has, every of these elements has a semantic meaning. As time goes on, you'll be understanding why it makes sense. Now, with CSS, by the time we get to CSS, we can actually use CSS to make the H6 elements to even be bigger than the H1 elements. In fact, we can even use CSS to make the p tag to be way bigger than the H1 elements. It doesn't really matter. But what is important here is the semantic meaning of every one of the elements that we are making use of. So it doesn't matter whether it is H1 or H6 or p tag. You need to know when and where to make use of every of them. Okay, so as time goes on, we'll be seeing every one of them. Now, this is the heading tags. It starts from H1 to H6, depending on what you want created. Now, the next tag I'm going to be talking about currently is the table tag. Now, you've seen table. I think you must have used Excel before, so you've seen how table is. So I'm going to be rushing through a lot of all these things now because I'm not going into full details for now. So, but we're just going to be doing, like, introducing you to those elements to see what they do. All right. So now let's say we want to create an element, a table of list of students. So let's say maybe in a class we have, let's say, like 30 students, and we want to get information about their name, their surname, their age, and let's even say maybe their favorite food. Okay, so we can do that. You know, we normally make use of things like Excel or even Microsoft Word to even create something like that. But we can also do similar thing in web development, so using HTML. So how do we do that? The first thing you need is the HTML element. Remember, every element has a purpose. Okay, so now we're going to be starting with the tag called the table tag. So this table tag is also a non-self-closing tag. What I mean is that it has a corresponding closing tag. It has the opening tag and the closing tag. Okay, so now this table tag is what is going to tell the browser that, oh, you are about to create a table. But this information is not sufficient for the browser to create table for you, because you can't just put a table tag there and expect it to just create a table for you magically. You need to supply it some information. So the first information you need is the row, because remember, a table is a table. It has rows and columns. Okay, so the first thing you do is to create the row. So how do you create the row in the table? By saying tr. So this tr represents the first row. Okay, so under the first row, that is where you now have series of columns. So but in our case now, I think we need just 4 columns. So the first column we need is the name. The second column, okay, let me say the first column will be the full name. The second column will be their age. The third column, let's just make use of 3 columns. So the third column will now be their favorite food. So for the sake of simplicity, so for us to add a column into a row, remember, if you look at it, there is a sequence with which we are creating all these things. You start with the table tag itself to tell the browser that we are about to create a table. Now within the table, you need to specify the row starting from the top. Then inside of each of the row, we now add a column. So the amount of column you want to create will determine the amount of elements you have in your under your tr. So the first column, which is going to represent the full name, we're not going to say td. So td. So here we will now write full name. Then we go to the next line. I will say td again, because we are creating another column now, right? So here we're going to say so what's the next column? The age. Now let me just duplicate this, and then I'll just say favorite. Let's just call it fave. I'm not write it fully. Favorite food. Okay. Now, if I should go back to the browser, we should be seeing 3 columns in our table currently. So let's check our browser. So if you look at it, we already have 3 columns. But if you look at it, it doesn't really look like a table. But one thing you should watch out for there is the fact that everything is going side by side. Okay. Now, I'm going to be talking about something soon, which is very important. So, which is going to explain why all these elements are being side by side. Okay. So now let's quickly add some rows. Now we are done with the first row. Now to add the second row, we need what? The tr tag also again. Now remember, we now need the columns too, so which means we need the td tag. So it means that the table tag is what will tell the browser that we are creating a table, whereas the tr tag is what is going to tell the browser that you are creating a row, whereas the td tag will tell the browser that you are creating a column within a tr, which is row. So the tr stands for table row, and the td stands for table data. Okay, so now let's create another td now. So here we're going to say let's say the part of the class member. So let's say Edward. Now let's say, now one thing you need to take notes here is that the first row, the amount of columns inside of it has to be the same amount of column in every of the other rows too. Now I won't say because I want to create multiple rows for different names. So each of these td represents, this first td represents the first column, the second one represents the second column, the third one represents the third column. So what does that mean? So it means that this one is going to represent the full name, then this second one is going to represent the age. So let's say this one, let's say you're 20 years old. Then the third column, which is for the favorite food. So let's say your favorite food is chicken and salad. Okay, so Now, if you should go back to the browser now, you should be seeing every one of those columns in their corresponding spaces. What do I mean by that? Let's check. So can you now see? So under the Edward Ihai is under the full name. The age, your 20, is under the age, and okay, we didn't fill the third one. So okay, we did. Okay, we only need to reload the page. I didn't reload properly. So you can see now that we now have chicken and salad as your favorite food. But we have some problem here. Everything is not being spaced out properly to look like a table. Okay, we'll fix all that later, but let's just focus on the table first. So now let me quickly create 3 more rows. So I'm just going to duplicate that first. So let's say another name will just be let's say, what should I write? Joseph Margaret. Okay, let's say she's 18 years, then our favorite food is, because she's a lady, let's just imagine that she likes pizza and burger. Okay, I'm not being stereotypical, but this is just an example. So let's say the third student is let's say Kafayat Arugundade. Okay, so let's say this one is, she's 21, and our favorite food is rice and turkey. Then the fourth student, so let's call this one Innocent Chukwemeka. Okay, so let's say this one is 19 years. Okay, and his own favorite food, what should his own favorite food be? Okay, let's just give him okay, shawarma and hot dog. Yeah, everybody's a rich man children. Yeah. So if I should come back to the browser, I will reload. Okay, so you can see that I think it's already having the shape of a table. All right, so everything is going to their own various columns. So because the age does not really need too much space, that's why it is being choked, just like the way it happens in Excel too. You can kind of make everything fit exactly to the biggest contents in the column. So I think that's what is going on. That's what is exactly what is going on here. So this is a table. This is how we create a table. Okay, now what if we want to make this full name, the age, and the favorite food part to all be bold, just like the way it normally happens in Microsoft Excel? How do we differentiate that this part is the heading? It's as simple as just saying, changing this TD to TH. Yeah, it's as simple as that. So there's another tag called TH, which stands for table head. Okay, so by default, the default styling for this TH tag is to make every one of them bold. Can you see? So now it looks more like a table now. So you can see everyone on their various columns. Okay, so that's not about table for now. So now let's quickly talk about lists. You must have seen listing even in Microsoft Word too. So how do we create list in using HTML? It's as simple as also telling the browser that, okay, browser, I want to create a list. So how do you tell it? Now in HTML, we have 2 types of list, just like the way we also have it in Microsoft Word too. The 2 types of list we have is the ordered list and the unordered list. What do we mean by that? We can have a list that is going sequentially. Let's say maybe A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, stuff like that. Those are ordered list. They are going in a particular order. But when you have a list that doesn't follow any sequence, just maybe some random list of things that you want to do for the day, those ones they don't necessarily have to go according to any order you get. So those kind of lists are called unordered lists. So how do we create those two different types of lists? Let's start with unordered list. So to create an unordered list, we make use of the UL tag, which stands for unordered list. Hence the U there. So when you see that, when you create that, the browser automatically knows that, okay, it's trying to create an unordered list. So you now need to give it the list that you want to create. How do you give it the list? You now start writing each of the list. So you wrap each of the list inside of a list tag, which is li tag. Li, which stands for the list. So you now say, because we are writing unordered list, it means that we don't need to follow any particular order to write them. So let's just say we are creating the list of the fruits that we love. So let's say I love mango. Okay. Now let me just duplicate this guy. So I'll just say I love watermelon too. What do I love again? I love tiger nuts. Okay. What other thing again? Let me just write anything there, banana, and then I don't like cherry. Garden egg. Okay. And let's put apple here. I would I don't eat it every time, so that's okay. So now if we go back to the browser now, you see that every of the list here is not following any order. So that is why it is not using 1, 2, 3 or ABC or whatever. Okay. So we just have dots. Okay. Now at times you might have seen some lists that don't have dots, that might have things like a circle or might have different kinds of icons. We can change these icons using CSS. You can specify whatever we want to use using CSS, but for now we're just going to stick to this. Now let's create an ordered list. So to create an ordered list, we're going to be needing something. We're going to be needing the OL tag, so which stands for ordered list, obviously. So now let's say we want to write the list of students. Let's just see list of students. So I'm going to be copying what we've written here before. So let's say now for you to start writing the list, also you also need the list tag here also, so which is li tag. So let's just create everything. So now let's write the list of the students according to how they perform. So we're going to say, because Edward here came first, so we're going to be putting this on name first. So I'm just going to be duplicating this into multiple times too. Let's just use 3. 3 is okay. Don't want to waste time. So let's say Innocent. Oh, let's just say Inibia. Say Margaret. Oh, okay, let's say Austin. Margaret. Yeah. So now if we go back to the browser now, we should be seeing a list with numbers. So we can decide now to now change it from using this 1, 2, 3 to make use of ABC, that's the capital letter, or to change it to using small letter alphabets, or we can even change it to Roman numerals. So we can do all those using CSS, but we are not doing CSS for today. So let's just focus on what we are doing today. Then the next tag I'm going to be introducing you to is the button tag. Okay, so button tag. That one is not difficult. It's just for how we create button. It's as simple as this. All right. Writing button. So when I write button, let's just click here. Let's just put something inside of here. Now this is a full tag. Okay. Now before I go to the browser, let's talk about some of the elements that are self-closing. For example, let's say HR tag. Now, if you look at this tag, the self-closing tag, by standard, we normally close them by doing like this, writing the the forward slash. Remember, every closing tag is to begin with the angular brackets and forward slash, then the name of the tag. That is how you know the ending tag. But when a tag is a self-closing tag, we don't need this. This is sufficient. The name, just the name of the tag is sufficient. But just for the sake of standardization and for backward compatibility, we normally make use of it like this. So it's kind of like a way of fusing the front, the opening tag and the closing tag, because the closing tag normally have the forward slash and the opening tag normally have the doesn't have the forward slash. So we are fusing them using this method. So it is possible for you to come across tags like this on the internet, or maybe when you are reading some other people's code. This is also allowed for self-closing tag. So these kind of tags now, we don't need to close it by saying, let's say maybe I just do it like this now, and then I will now say slash HR. This is wrong. It's not even needed. So what is just needed is just forward slash like this, and that is okay. So what does this one do? This is called horizontal rule. So if I should go back to the browser, I should be seeing a straight line, and we see it now. So then now let me quickly round up with two more tags, then we'll continue from there in the next section. So now another tag I'm going to be talking about here is the BR tag. It's also a self-closing tag too. So BR, okay, let's put this forward slash there. Now what this one does is it forces the browser to go to the next line. So let's say maybe as I have these two button tags here now, okay, now let me use two p tags. I'm going to be creating p tags here. I'll just say Lauren 30, and then I'll create another one again. Okay, let me just duplicate this one multiple times. So if I should go back to the browser now, we should be seeing 3 lines. Okay, so what if I need more space between these 3 paragraphs? So what do I do? Without using CSS, we can actually make use of CSS to do all those adjustments, but when we are not using CSS, we can make use of BR. So what I'll just do is I'll just come in between them. I can even put it here. I'll just say BR, and then if I should write it once, it's going to force the browser to go to the next line. That's creating an empty line. Okay, if I should reload, you can see now that there is more space between this first paragraph and this second paragraph compared to the space we have between the second paragraph and the third paragraph. So the more BR tag I use here, let me just duplicate this. If I should have it 4 times, we're going to be having 4 lines, 4 empty lines. You can see we have big line. So BR tag is for breaking. So the BR stands for break. So break the line. Okay. So it's also a self-closing tag. So we have a lot of self-closing tags. You can make research online to find out the different self-closing tag we have. And another very, very common self-closing tag that you will see everywhere on the internet is the image tag, img. It's a self-closing tag. Now you can see that immediately I type the image tag, the VS Code automatically added 2 attributes for me. Because it's a self-closing tag, the browser needs some more information to know what to do with it. Now, image tag, it needs 2 information at least. The SRC, which stands for the source, and the ALT, which stands for alternative. So what does these 2 guys do? Is I'm not going to put anything here for now. When we are talking about image tag, there will be a section where I'm going to talk about image tag fully. But what these 2 tags does is this SRC is going to point where the image is. Now, I have an image in this folder. I'm not going to be using anything for now. I only want to rename this guy. I'll just take the name. Let me rename it, and then just copy the name. Okay, Control A, and then I'm just going to come back here and then paste the name here. Okay, this is telling the browser that it should go and look for this image inside of this folder. Don't worry, when we get to the section where we're talking about image, I'm going to explain fully about using this SRC attribute. If I should come back to the browser and we reload, you can see this image of the projects that we want to develop is being loaded into. Now take note, this is not this other tab where we have only the image showing here. This is part of our contents of the website that we are. You can see the browser is bringing in the image into it. Now I can even force the browser here. Now remember I said this is the two attributes that is very, very important, and that is why the VS Code is actually bringing those two attributes into it automatically for us. So this SRC is telling the browser where to look for the image, the actual image to use. Now this alternate, what does this one do? Now let's say maybe the browser could not find the image, or the browser is taking some time to load. Maybe the network is bad or something. Pending the time the browser is going to load that image, whatever you write inside of this alt attribute is what will be displayed. Now I'm going to intentionally make a mistake, like just put double dash here, okay, triple dash, just to make sure that the information here is not correct. So which means that when the browser tries to load this particular image, it's not be able to find it, so it will not be forced to display whatever I write here. So now let's say I'm just going to write the project to be built. Now let's go back to the browser and reload. So you can see now that we are now having the text, the project. If I should put my cursor on top of it, you can see this stuff is showing this, the project, like the beginning of it. So this is very, very useful, not for you that can see the browser. It's just a way of telling you that okay, something is supposed to be here, but the browser cannot find it yet, or it couldn't load it at all. Now another important usefulness of this alt is for those people that cannot see. You know, we have people that browse the internet but they can't see. They make use of something called screen reading, whereby the browser will be reading the content of the website for you. So when the browser gets to this part, definitely it doesn't need to even load this image because the person cannot see it. So it's going to read whatever is here. It's going to read it to the person that okay, the project to be built. That is what the person will hear when the browser is reading the screen to you. All right. So as time goes on, we'll be understanding all these things the more. Now let's take this thing back to the correct name. So now I can, another attribute that we can apply here is the width equals to, I'm going to just say 300. So which stands for 300 pixel. Then height, and then I'm going to say 300 pixel too. Now if I should reload this browser now, you can see that it's not going to take up the amount of space it was taking before. You can see that now everything is now being shrinked to that size that I specified. Why it is happening like this, I'll be explaining when we get to the dedicated section for image elements. All right. So I'll be ending this this session at this point. So we'll be continue from here next time. So see you in the next one. Thank you.